Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast where we delve into one of the most enigmatic events in American history, the Battle of Los Angeles. Los Angeles, a city known for its vibrant culture, innovative spirit, and cinematic legacy, has always been a focal point of American life. From the glitz of Hollywood to the stunning Pacific coastline, LA represents dreams, diversity, and resilience. And as we gather here today, many of our listeners hail from this iconic city, alongside others from the bustling streets of New York and the cultural hub of Toronto. You all bring unique perspectives that enrich our discussions and community. Today, as we speak, Los Angeles is facing significant developments that resonate beyond its borders, capturing the nation's attention. These events have sparked essential conversations on issues that profoundly affect us all. While we acknowledge the weight of these current realities, we want to emphasize that today's episode will focus exclusively on history and the captivating story of what transpired on the night of February 25th, 1942. What happened that night when anti-aircraft artillery lit up the skies over Los Angeles? Was it an enemy advance? A case of mistaken identity? Or perhaps something even stranger? Through eyewitness accounts, we'll unpack the military responses, examine the panic that gripped the city, and explore the cultural impact that has kept the Battle of Los Angeles alive in public consciousness for over 8 decades. This event serves as a powerful reminder of how fear can shape a community's response to crises. As we delve into the details of that night, we hope to draw connections to broader themes that continue to resonate today. So please sit back, relax, and prepare to unlock the mysteries of the past with us. We're excited to take you on this fascinating journey through history. Trust us, you won't want to miss a moment of what we have in store. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's set the scene. Los Angeles, the early hours of February 25, 1942. Imagine a city just holding its breath.
Yeah.
Just 2 months after the gut punch of Pearl Harbor, America is raw, feeling incredibly vulnerable.
Absolutely. That long-held sense of isolation the U.S. had,
Mm-hmm.
it was just gone, vanished, really, on December 7th, 1941.
Right.
Pearl Harbor killed over 2,400 Americans, wiped out a huge chunk of the Pacific Fleet,
Yeah.
8 battleships included. Suddenly, war wasn't some distant thing.
No.
It was a terrifying possibility right here, right on the coast.
And in Los Angeles, you could feel that fear. It was thick in the air. People were jumping. Then just after 2 a.m. on the 25th, it just exploded. Air raid sirens start wailing.
Yeah, that's sound alone.
Searchlights are slicing through the dark, crisscrossing like mad, and then suddenly, boom, 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 the anti-aircraft guns open fire.
Over 1,400 rounds, the sources say, just screaming into the night sky.
It must have been sheer pandemonium.
Oh, completely. According to the sources you've shared, eyewitnesses describe the sky lighting up like the 4th of July. Explosions everywhere, people spilling into the streets, some just standing there kind of frozen in disbelief,
Yeah.
You hear accounts like Johnny the Mechanic or the Morales family. They were utterly convinced they were under attack, hearts pounding, not knowing whether to run or hide.
It's a dramatic, almost,
Yeah,
a surreal scene, isn't it?
definitely.
And it's the heart of the material you brought us, this stack of articles, reports, research, all covering what happened that night, what we now call the Battle of Los Angeles.
That's right. So our mission today, pulling directly from your sources, is to go beyond just the spectacle of the surface story.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a deep dive into what these documents reveal about what really happened,
Okay.
the historical context, the technology they had back then, the very human factors involved.
Right, the psychology of it all.
Exactly. And how the government scrambled to explain it, and why it still holds this fascination, this mystery, even today.
And we've got sources here touching on pretty much everything. The lead up, the tech, the official story, or maybe lack thereof.
4 stories, plural.
Yeah, the wild theories that popped up, the cultural impact, how it compares to other moments of panic. We're going to try and pull out the most important insights from this whole stack for this deep dive.
Sounds good. Let's start by really understanding the pressure cooker environment America was in back in early 1942.
That Pearl Harbor attack, It wasn't just the terrible loss of life and ships. It was a massive psychological blow, wasn't it?
Absolutely profound. It just shattered that illusion of safety, of security the U.S. had felt for so long.
Yeah.
Launched the country into World War II.
Yeah.
And left the entire nation feeling acutely vulnerable, exposed.
And the sources show this created a perfect breeding ground for fear, paranoia even.
Right. War wasn't distant anymore. Then you add reports, like the one circulating that very evening, about enemy submarines maybe being spotted off the California coast.
Oh, wow, that same night.
That same night, it just magnified the anxiety for everyone, public and military alike.
And the media back then, well, it wasn't exactly calming things down from what the sources suggest.
Not always, no. Reports could be sensationalized, feeding fears of espionage, sabotage, creating this general climate of distrust. And cities right on the coast, like Los Angeles, they felt particularly exposed, like sitting ducks almost.
So the government is reacting to all this fear, too.
Of course. Air raid drills became common. Blackout procedures were practiced constantly. Civilian defense units were organizing.
You see the old photos, propaganda posters urging vigilance.
Exactly. Signs warning people to watch for enemy aircraft were everywhere. By February 1942, Los Angeles was, as one source puts it, just enmeshed in this atmosphere of anxiety.
And here's a really key point from the sources. This pervasive fear wasn't just a public thing. It directly shaped the military's thinking, their strategies.
Right. They were developing plans based largely on fear and speculation, not necessarily on hard, solid intelligence.
Which brings us right back to the night itself, February 24th into the 25th, and how all that anxiety just boiled over.
Okay, so the evening is already tense. Around 7:00 p.m., those unconfirmed reports of enemy subs come in. Just adds to the unease.
Right.
Then, around 10:00 p.m., the air raid sirens start. Not the main event yet, but another jolt.
And then the action shifts to the military side.
Yes. At the 37th Coast Artillery Regiment, their radar systems, new technology, remember, pick up unidentified objects apparently approaching L.A.
And this is where it really kicks off.
This is the pivot point, according to the sources. Lieutenant H.F. Smith sees these blips on the radar screen.
Just dots on a screen, basically.
Pretty much. And based on that limited information and the intense atmosphere, he orders the guns ready. He genuinely believed they were under attack.
And here's where the sources point to a major issue. The tech versus the training.
Exactly. The military had this new radar, but they weren't fully equipped to handle it yet.
Yeah.
The sources say they lacked clear protocols for interpreting the data, for coordinating a response effectively.
So driven by that deep-seated paranoia, the shock of Pearl Harbor is still fresh.
Their reaction was, as one source describes it, swift and panicked. Not cautious.
And that panic pulls the trigger. Literally. Artillery batteries across the city just start firing.
Unleashing everything they had into the dark sky. Over 1,400 rounds fired.
The eyewitness accounts you provided, they're just harrowing. Sky lit up like the 4th of July. Tracers, explosions.
People running out of their homes, some standing frozen, just watching, convinced, like Johnny the mechanic, they thought we were being attacked.
I read one account from a soldier at an artillery position saying he only saw the tracer rounds going up. Whatever they were shooting at, he said it just vanished.
Right. And there was incredible confusion within the command structure, too. They're struggling to make sense of this radar data in real time. Lieutenant Smith is making calls, ordering action based on what he thinks are unidentified aircraft moving toward the city.
It sounded like an atmosphere bordering on apocalyptic down on the ground.
Oh, absolutely. Panic was rampant. People speculating wildly. Is it an air raid? Is it a full Japanese invasion? Unfounded rumors spreading like wildfire.
So thousands of rounds fired at something. Maybe nothing. Citywide panic. Let's dig into the why, based on these sources. What about the technology, the military's readiness?
Well, the sources are really clear on this. In 1932, the U.S. military was modernizing, yes, but its systems were, quote, still in their infancy.
Radar is the big one here, right?
Prime example, revolutionary technology, but very new. They had these mobile systems, the SCR-268, the SCR-270, theoretically could track things maybe 100 miles out.
But
Big butts. These early radar systems had major limitations. Think of it like looking at a really blurry, fuzzy picture.
Okay.
Low resolution made it incredibly difficult to tell a single plane from, say, a flock of birds or even just weather disturbances. On top of that, the operators were often inexperienced and lacked comprehensive training. They struggled, the sources say, to interpret the data accurately.
Meaning they could easily get the size, speed, or altitude wrong.
Very easily. Misidentification was a real risk.
And the guns they were using.
The anti-aircraft weaponry. You had the .50 caliber Browning machine guns, high rate of fire, but totally dependent on visual aiming skill.
Which you didn't have in the dark.
Exactly. And the bigger 3-inch anti-aircraft guns. They fired explosive shells, but needed a whole complex fire command system people and equipment to calculate where to aim.
And these were meant for known, visible targets.
Right. Firing blind into the night based on fuzzy, uncertain radar data. These systems were severely hampered. It wasn't what they were designed for.
So the sources really paint a picture of multiple failures stacking up.
It's a confluence of inhibiting factors. Communication and command coordination wasn't seamless, especially between different branches like the Coast Artillery and the Air Corps.
Delays, misunderstandings.
Proliferated, as one source puts it. And the interface, the connection between the radar guys seeing the blips and the artillery crews needing to aim the guns, it wasn't smooth.
So commanders are making snap decisions.
Rapid decisions based on incomplete data from operators who weren't fully trained. That's a quote.
And then there's the protocol itself, the standing orders.
Yeah, that's huge. Still reeling from Pearl Harbor, the Army had this directive. Any suspected enemy threat must be engaged without hesitation.
Understandable, maybe, given the context.
But it prioritized shooting first over verifying the threat. Aggression over caution.
And the psychology, you mentioned that earlier.
Massive factor. That climate of fear meant military leaders were kind of predisposed to aggressive responses over cautious assessments.
So radar operators are maybe seeing threats where there aren't any.
They were psychologically primed. The prevailing mindset, as a source notes, was that any detected object could be a potential enemy. Critical thinking kind of went out the window.
So it's almost a perfect storm.
Exactly. Failures in function, failures in protocol, radar misinterpreted without proper checks.
Environmental factors too. Weather.
Mentioned in some sources, yeah. Low clouds, maybe rain, could distort signals, create ghost images. Some sources even speculate weather balloons or commercial planes might have caused some blips.
And the artillery firing blindly just added to the chaos.
Exacerbated the confusion, definitely. Units were inexperienced. Panic and adrenaline likely led to uncoordinated and ineffective firing patterns.
And a key point you pulled from the sources about the aftermath, the analysis failed too.
Yeah, the failure to thoroughly analyze what was happening during the event and immediately after,
Yeah.
that led to misleading initial reports.
They quickly called it a false alarm.
Pretty much pivoted to blaming weather balloons, misinterpretations. But this lack of a clear, immediate, fact-based explanation and accountability,
Right.
it left a vacuum.
Which allowed conspiracy theories
To flourish in the absence of facts,
Mhm.
as the sources state.
Okay, so that vacuum leads us straight into how the government tried to handle this mess, the fallout.
Right. The immediate aftermath, you can imagine the scramble at military headquarters.
Oh.
What just happened?
Yeah.
General George C. Marshall, the Army Chief of Staff, he dispatched investigators right away. There was urgency, heightened by Pearl Harbor. They couldn't afford another perceived defense failure.
But the messaging, it got confusing fast, didn't it?
Almost immediately. You had Lieutenant General John L. DeWitt, head of the Western Defense Command. He initially insisted an enemy was responsible, claimed a foreign aircraft approached the city.
Sticking to that initial fear-based reaction.
Clearly rooted in that prevailing mindset, that intense paranoia of the moment.
But then the story starts changing.
Over the following week, yes, official explanations started shifting. First, vague ideas like misidentified weather balloons or commercial planes.
Okay.
Then, by February 27th, just 2 days later, General DeWitt himself is telling reporters it was all just nervousness and false alarms, a complete turnaround.
That's confusing for the public.
And it got worse. Within days, the Army Air Forces contradicted DeWitt flat out, said no enemy aircraft were ever in the area.
So different branches saying different things.
Exactly. As the sources point out, this gap between military statements created confusion. It really started to erode public trust. Who do you believe?
When did the final sort of official word come down?
Not for almost a month. March 24th, 1942. The Army formally declared it a false alarm. Triggered by atmospheric conditions, weather balloons, maybe commercial planes, searchlights reflecting off clouds, a whole grab bag of possibilities.
But that explanation just raises more questions, right?
Precisely. As the sources dryly note, it begged the question of why such a significant military response had been initiated if there was ultimately no threat. Why fire 1,400 shells at a weather balloon?
So handling this fallout was a huge PR nightmare for the War Department.
Massive challenge. They had to manage public perception, people were scared, now they're confused, and deal with the internal military screw-ups. This very public spectacle demanded a believable explanation, and frankly, they struggled to provide one.
Was there a PR campaign to try and smooth things over?
Yeah, they tried damage control, attempted to soften the blow of the failed protocols by emphasizing preparedness, highlighting ongoing training, the importance of civilian defense efforts.
Trying to pivot the message.
Exactly. From the chaos of the night to, we're vigilant, we're ready. Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson gave a speech, March 5th, aiming for unity and resilience.
Fun.
But the sources note that even he unintentionally sowed additional doubts by underlining just how vulnerable the U.S. homeland still felt. It kind of backfired.
What about internally? Did the military learn anything?
Investigations did happen. Reports suggest they focused heavily on the severe lack of coordination between the different branches involved that night.
Coast Artillery, Air Corps.
Right. They recognized an urgent need for streamlined command structures, much better training on that new radar tech, and clearer protocols for actually assessing threats before opening fire.
Did it impact civil defense efforts?
Significantly. It actually bolstered them. Led to more campaigns on aircraft identification, trying to help civilians tell friend from foe.
Oh.
More frequent air raid drills.
The role of civilian wardens became more important.
Even more crucial. Not just for blackouts, but helping manage public anxiety, facilitating communication on the ground. It really hammered home the need for military-civilian cooperation.
And politically, were there repercussions?
Oh, yeah. The Battle of Los Angeles definitely intensified policy debates about air defense, led to arguments over military funding, calls for more coastal defenses, legislative efforts looking into technological readiness, and overall strategy.
Leaders had to show they were doing something.
They understood they had to visibly address the public's fear, demonstrate action, but as you see in the sources, despite all this, skepticism lingered.
Because of the conflicting stories.
That initial confusion, the shifting explanations, it made it really hard for the government to fully regain trust on this issue. It just highlighted that difficult wartime balancing act.
Yeah.
How much transparency versus maintaining morale and not revealing weaknesses.
And that lingering skepticism, that lack of a clear answer, it just paved the way for the next chapter, didn't it? The conspiracy theories, the mysteries that still swirl around it.
Absolutely. Given the intense ambiguity, the fact no enemy was ever confirmed, the conflicting official statements, and just the sheer scale of the military's response to what? It's maybe not surprising theories emerged. People needed an explanation for what felt like a monumental mistake.
And the big one, the one everyone knows, is the UFO theory.
The most persistent, yeah. Proponents point to those eyewitness accounts, people describing strange objects, bright lights, glowing spheres, something large, maybe hovering, that didn't look like any known aircraft.
But the counter-argument...
From a conventional view highlighted in the sources, it's the total lack of physical evidence. Despite thousands of rounds fired, no wreckage, nothing.
Right.
Skeptics argue those accounts, given under extreme stress, in the dark, with searchlights everywhere, could easily be misinterpretations of flares, the searchlights themselves hitting clouds, atmospheric phenomena.
Okay, what other theories are mentioned in the sources?
Another one is secret military operations. The idea being the government was testing some new covert technology or running a secret maneuver that night.
And it went wrong.
It went wrong, inadvertently triggered the panic response, and then they covered it up by calling it a false alarm.
Is there any evidence for that?
Well, the sources mention that reviews of declassified documents haven't turned up any records of secret ops that would fit the bill for that night. So, skeptics point to a lack of corroborating evidence in the official record.
Then there's the official explanation itself, the weather balloons, misidentifications.
Which became the accepted military position. The evidence cited is those limitations of early radar we talked about, prone to error, untrained operators, plus how searchlight reflections or actual weather balloons could create false radar returns.
But people who believe other theories don't buy that.
Often, no. They see it as a government just trying to placate the public, avoid embarrassment, not really addressing what some witnesses swore they saw.
Were there theories linking it back to Japan? Sabotage or invasion?
Especially right after the event, yes. Given the intense fear post-Pearl Harbor and those submarine sighting reports that same night, it felt plausible to many at the time. Espionage, maybe a small-scale infiltration attempt.
But investigations found nothing.
Correct. Subsequent investigations found no intelligence connecting those submarine reports or anything else to the actual anti-aircraft firing.
And finally, the sources emphasized the psychological angle again.
Hugely important. Many analyses argue the intense anxiety and stress of wartime fundamentally shaped perceptions and behavior. that this provides a powerful explanation for the rapid escalation, the chaos, without needing a more fantastical cause.
So, from this perspective, the psychology explains most of it.
Skeptics of the more extraordinary theories would say yes.
Yeah.
It accounts for the confusion, the overreaction, more effectively than theories requiring secret plots or unknown visitors.
So why is it still debated? Why the mystery?
It's precisely that confluence of factors, the genuine question. What, if anything, was in the sky? The very real possibility of just sheer incompetence and overreaction. The potential, however small, for some kind of cover-up or misinformation. And layered over all of it, the undeniable, powerful role of human psychology under extreme pressure.
It leaves a lot of room for doubt.
Exactly. The sources note, its legacy isn't just history, it's a story marked by enduring mystery and a, quote, robust public fascination with the unknown.
And that fascination is why it's had such a clear impact on culture and why it still resonates psychologically.
Definitely. This wasn't just some local incident that faded away. Because of those sensational media reports initially screaming invasion, it became a national story almost immediately. It embedded itself in American folklore, taking on a sort of mythic quality.
And you see that reflected in culture, right?
Clearly. Think about movies like Battle of Los Angeles. Okay, reimagines it as an alien invasion, but it's directly tapping into that underlying anxiety, that uncertainty the original event left behind.
Documentaries, too, they keep revisiting it.
Constantly exploring the history, the different theories, keeping the memory alive for new audiences. That image of LA on the brink, it clearly speaks to a collective fear of the unknown.
Does it pop up in literature as well?
Yeah, you have historical accounts digging into the facts and implications, but also fiction, using the backdrop of that night to explore themes of paranoia, fear, the human struggle against something unseen or misunderstood. Art, too, visual representations capturing the chaos, the surreal light show.
And it lives on as folklore, urban legend.
Oh, for sure. It's the extraordinary nature of those unanswered questions. It's perfect fuel for speculation. Stories about UFO cover-ups, the government hiding things, they circulate online, in documentaries, podcasts.
Like this one.
Hey, right. It's this blend of fact and speculation that lets the story keep being retold, adapted. It secures its place in, as one source calls it, American cultural mythology. Shows how history gets reinterpreted through contemporary anxieties.
Beyond the cultural side, though, the sources talk about real psychological impacts on the people who live through it.
Absolutely. Profound impacts. The immediate reaction was intense, widespread fear, confusion, hysteria, people rushing out, terrified, disbelieving, some just frozen by the spectacle.
That feeling of hyperarousal you mentioned.
Yeah, body going into overdrive, heart pounding, senses heightened, maybe unable to think clearly. It's a classic stress response, very similar to what you see in trauma situations like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
And it wasn't just individual, it was collective.
Yes, a shared fear. It created a collective trauma, as the sources put it, across the community.
Yeah.
Forged this narrative of vulnerability.
But paradoxically, that shared trauma could also bring people together.
They could. The sources mention how, while rooted in trauma, this shared ordeal sometimes strengthened social bonds, built community resilience as people tried to cope and make sense of it together.
Were there long-term effects for individuals mentioned?
Potential, yes. Development of anxiety disorders, hypervigilance, avoiding reminders, intrusive thoughts about the war or the event, an ongoing sense of insecurity for many.
And critically, that erosion of trust we talked about.
Hugely important. That false alarm, the shifting explanations, it shattered trust in government and military for a lot of people. A sense of betrayal, disillusionment,
Yeah.
questioning the competence of the authorities meant to protect them. That can breed lasting paranoia, skepticism towards future official alerts or information.
How did survivors cope, according to the sources?
Their recollections were often marked by that confusion, fear, sometimes resentment. It shaped their views for years. Coping mechanisms range from seeking therapy to community organizing, discussion groups. Ways to foster what the sources call communal efficacy and resilience, finding strength together.
And this could even affect later generations.
It could. Narratives passed down. Children or grandchildren internalizing parental fears about security, about trusting authority.
And the media's role in shaping the memory.
Crucial. Sensationalized accounts shape perception. That ongoing blend of fact and fiction keeps the dialogue going about fear-based responses. The incident remains part of this cultural mythos, evoking our deep-seated anxieties about vulnerability.
Looking at the Battle of LA through the lens of your sources, it really stands out, but maybe not as unique, more like a part of a pattern.
That's a key takeaway. Comparing it to other moments of panic really highlights this pattern. Take the famous War of the Worlds radio broadcast in 1938.
Orson Welles.
Exactly. Formatted like real news bulletins. People tuned in late, missed the disclaimers, and genuinely believed Martians were invading New Jersey. Widespread panic, people fleeing their homes.
The similarities are pretty striking, aren't they?
Mass panic, the power of media to induce fear and shape reality for people, the profound psychological effects. Fear of aliens then, fear of aerial attack in 42, but the human reaction, very similar.
What about other wartime false alarms?
Plenty mentioned, like the dew line alerts during the Cold War, early warning radar stations misidentifying geese, or atmospheric effects as incoming Soviet bombers.
Leading to heightened alerts?
Frenzied preparations sometimes, for threats that didn't exist. Public confusion.
The Cuban Missile Crisis example is chilling.
October 62. U.S. military systems misinterpreted radar signals. For a terrifying window, they thought they were under nuclear attack. Leaders were on the verge of retaliating. A near catastrophe, reminding us of the stakes when communication and interpretation fail under extreme fear.
Even closer to the Battle of LA, time-wise, there was an incident in San Francisco.
The Great Blackout in 42. Wartime safety drills mistaken for a real attack. Sirens, panic in the streets. It shows how false alarms cause chaos, but also risk desensitization if they keep happening. People might stop believing them.
So, looking across these incidents, what are the big lessons learned?
They led to increased scrutiny of media practices, definitely. Calls for more clarity in broadcasts, responsible reporting during crises.
And for official communications.
Spurred efforts to establish clearer guidelines, better protocols for alerts. Emphasizing accuracy, proper training for the people issuing alerts, and better strategies for managing the public's response. Trying not to cause panic.
Again, awareness of the psychology involved.
A growing awareness, yes. Recognizing the impact of fear and anxiety, the need to address public perception carefully, maybe even provide mental health support during emergencies.
So the Battle of Los Angeles, seen in this context,
Becomes a really potent case study. It starkly reveals that complex interplay of intense national anxiety, new and imperfect technology, the limits of human perception under stress, and the absolute criticality of clear, trustworthy communication. Learning from these past moments is vital for navigating similar challenges today.
Okay. So to wrap up our deep dive into the sources you brought us, we've journeyed through that fear-filled atmosphere of 1942 America. The chaotic, almost unbelievable night itself, the tech limits, the human errors, the government's confusing attempts to explain it.
The theories that sprang up to fill the void.
Right, the cultural echoes, the psychological footprint it left behind.
It's quite a story.
It really is. And the core insight from these sources, the thread running through it all, seems to be that the Battle of Los Angeles wasn't an actual battle against a foreign enemy or, aliens.
No.
Instead, it was this powerful, dramatic explosion of intense national anxiety hitting up against immature technology and just fundamental human fallibility under extreme pressure.
Well put. It shows pretty clearly how fear, especially unchecked fear mixed with uncertainty, can conjure a reality that feels much more terrifying than the actual facts might warrant.
And that's why it still feels relevant, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We live in a world still navigating incredibly complex challenges, floods of information, deep uncertainties, those lessons from 1942 Los Angeles about critical thinking, reliable information, clear communication, understanding the psychology of fear and panic. They feel incredibly relevant right now.
So here's a final thought for you. Drawing from everything we've discussed from these sources, the Battle of Los Angeles demonstrates how the fear of the unknown, tangled up with fragmented information and human error, can literally create a perceived reality far more chaotic and terrifying than what actually occurred. How might we, today, better equip ourselves as individuals, as communities, to navigate uncertainty, to filter the noise, and ensure our own fears don't inadvertently conjure the very threats we dread seeing, metaphorically or literally, in the sky?
As we conclude this fascinating journey through the Battle of Los Angeles, we would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to our special guests, Adam and Jolly, for sharing their expertise in American history with us. Your insights have truly enriched our understanding of this remarkable event and its implications. Today, we examined how the Battle of Los Angeles unfolded, a night marked by confusion, fear, and a range of conflicting interpretations. From the eyewitness accounts to the military responses, we've seen how a single event can have lasting repercussions on our collective memory and cultural narrative. We invite you, our audience, to engage with us. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button on the Few Minutes channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the Battle of Los Angeles or any other historical topic you find intriguing. Share your opinions in the comments section and don't forget to spread the word by sharing this video with your friends and family. Thank you for staying with us until the end. We appreciate your support and enthusiasm for exploring history together. Be sure to stay tuned for our upcoming video where we'll dive into even more captivating stories from the past. Until next time, take care and keep the curiosity alive.